Welcome to Gemini season. If it has felt like the last basically half of this year has been a series of thwarted plans or revised manuscripts, conversations that felt like they had to be ran 3 or 4 times, that makes sense. There has been a lot going on with a lot of different things, astrologically, politically, personally, everything, right? So Gemini season, if I can be so bold to say, looks like the turning point where we get a reprieve. We acknowledge that there's been a lot of pain, a lot of strife, but now there is a turning of the tides in many different ways. And it may be best to speak about these transits coming up in a neutral way because it's a mixed bag. A mixed bag of lots of extremes that could show up in our lives, our personal lives, in a neutral or balanced way. So I want to be careful with that when I give my interpretations. When I think of Gemini season, I think about the saying, "It is not flaky to change your mind," which is a saying lots of people have said, but I've heard it from Michelle Pelzon Lipsitz, an incredible wise teacher in our times, talking about how, or she often talks about how changing your mind is responding to new information. And I think that is one of the things in our culture that we fear so much. And possibly the reason we talk about the zodiac sign of Gemini as two-faced, or they shift moods really quickly. I think that's a response to our cultural fear of mental change. So in this season, this month-long moment that the sun is in the zodiac sign of Gemini, I feel like we're called to examine why there is such a great fear of mental shifting. And then, if we want to go further, allow ourselves to change and shift with new information. Allow ourselves to receive new information. Allow ourselves to maybe approach a friend or a colleague that is going to give you something that may change your mind, and be open to that. So that's what's on my mind, is who can I talk with this month to help me lean more into my flow and what will allow me to grow, what will allow me to change, shift, and grow if I did not talk to that person, as if I didn't talk to that person. Another thing I think about with Gemini season is using our hands. I wonder if Jupiter's presence in the sign of Gemini for basically a whole year. I'm gonna go back a little bit. So what I've noticed amongst friends and culturally is in our discourse, we're talking about crafting, gardening, sewing, knitting, things that use our hands that we can't speed up, and we don't want to speed up because the process, Gemini words of process, practice, movement, using our hands is the magic of it, is the magic of these crafts, these creations. So I'm wondering if Jupiter's presence in Gemini has a lot to do with that, the expansion of this presence of hand making by hand, cooking, baking, that kind of thing in our culture. I would love to hear in the comments if you've noticed that as well, or if that's just my age bracket, mid-30s is when we begin, everyone's knitting, everyone is hand sewing garments, stuff like that. Let me know, because I can only notice what I notice, right? Here's my noticing. So thinking about Gemini season when the sun is in Gemini, maybe this is a period, a 30-day period where we use our hands. That Gemini rules the hands. All of those double-bodied signs, Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius, has a lot to do with the parts of our body where there's two of them. And specifically Gemini is for hands. So thinking about how we use our hands, how our hands gather things, gather information, how we tend to things with our hands. That's something to incorporate into the Gemini season for yourself. And then lastly, I was thinking about how Gemini, all of the double-bodied signs also have a lot to do with digestion. I'm not going to go into the deep dive on that, but I was thinking about mental digestion, the air sign, mutable sign, Gemini, confusion, mental exhaustion, brain fog, tripping up on words. That is usually a sign of there's too much in there, in the mind, and it has not been fully digested or integrated yet. So in this season, if you're sensing like, oh, there's just like too much going on, there's too much brain fog, you can't quite get ahead of your mind, this may be a really, really good season to focus on integration. And that could look like a million things, which is something I say all the time. It's a very personal practice to decide how you want to digest your mental information. That personally looks like journaling for me. Actively digesting, actively working through the thoughts that are like running around in my head with my hand, actually, is like one of the most fruitful ways for me to feel like I have my center again. It could look like knitting. It really could look like knitting is how you mentally digest. It could be conversing with someone else and like figuring stuff out live with another person. Dialogue is one amazing way to integrate mental information. It could be making boundaries around what you digest or what you ingest, I guess, consume mentally. So maybe it's you take after 5 p.m. every day, you don't look at the internet or your phone, or you don't even watch TV, like something like that, to help you digest. This is the season where mental overwhelm or brain fog would be more present than other seasons as well, because the sun is there. And what the sun does is the sun lends light or consciousness or attention to a part of our charts or a part of the sky. And collectively, that energy is Gemini, basically everything I've been saying. And then in your chart, which I'll get into for every rising sign, in your chart, that sun, our sun, is shining their light on like one area of our life. And it's pretty typical that all areas of the life, I'm going to back up. Wherever the sun is shining, no matter whose chart it is, the Gemini energy will be increasing mental energy as well. And that can be like, if we're thinking about the first house is about the self, the life, the desire, the impetus. So that energy would be more mental in your whole life, but more particularly in Gemini season, there's a more mental emphasis on your personhood. Okay, so that's my intro to Gemini season. I will be going through every single rising sign. For this video, it'll just be one element's rising sign. And yeah, let's jump in. Okay, before we jump in though, I forgot about this. There's like a bajillion things that are happening in this Gemini season, but there are 3 like major things, transits. The first is basically right when Gemini season begins, Saturn moves into Aries. Saturn hasn't been in Aries since the 1990s. So it's been a while since we've felt that energy. And some of us haven't even felt that energy in our lifetime yet. So I'll talk about this specifically for everyone's rising sign chart. But in general, Saturn in Aries we're shifting from Saturn and Pisces. We're past 2.5 years. Saturn, the planet of karma, limitations, lessons, boundaries, discipline, has been in the sign of like Pisces boundarylessness, compassion, fluidness. And there's so much to say about this. And I'm not doing like a whole video just on Saturn, Pisces, and Saturn, and Aries, and maybe I will. Well, what I'm seeing or what I'm sensing is that the past 2.5 years, there's been a lot of energy toward leaning into like wisdom teachers or developing one's own intuitive skills. And this has been pretty widely experienced compared to other generations. I think also because Neptune has been in Pisces, the sign of Pisces, for a while. I think like 12 years. So I think Saturn is asking us, or has been asking us, to lean into the lessons of developing our own psychic abilities, our own intuitive abilities, listening to the collective more closely, but also like dissolving boundaries between ourselves. This is like all very much vague language because I want to start talking about Saturn in Aries, where that the difference between Pisces and Aries is vast. I think between, speaking of any zodiac sign next to another, I think Pisces and Aries energy really is so differently experienced as humans compared to other signs possibly. I see Saturn and Aries asking us to develop our own selves. That's the Aries energy, like selfhood, initiative, leadership, our own agency, in not relying necessarily on the wisdom teachers or on listening to the collective. It's more about listening to our own chest, like speaking from the chest and learning those lessons of you are who you are, and your separateness, your individual separateness is like the most fruitful garden. And that's probably a really positive way to think about Saturn, a planet of limitations, in Aries, a really flagrant, fiery, loud, like zesty kind of energy. There are a lot of discussions on how Saturn in Aries has shown up on the global sphere in the past and how that looked like in conflicts. It often coincides with a great war or political strife. But thinking about this for our own personal energies, I think I see Saturn in Aries as the invitation to speak up, to be our own advocates, and not to rely on political parties possibly that won't be advocating for you, even if they say they will. That's a little bit of my own editorial there. So that's what I'm seeing for that. Then one of the other 3 transits for Gemini season that I'm seeing is significant is the Mercury Cazimi in Gemini on May 29th. So a Cazimi is when a planet joins the sun at the exact same degree, and Cazimi literally means, or translated means, in the heart of. So when Mercury is in the heart of the sun, it's this like day or two-ish long, like intense clarity. It could look like a beginning to a new season, especially when it comes to like your mental energy. I think because this is occurring in the sign of Gemini as well, there's a double emphasis on mental energy. So Mercury and Gemini. It could look like you get a really great idea that like is the beginning of a new chapter for you. So this Mercury Cazimi, it can show up in many different ways. It could look like a really important conversation happens that day. It looks positive in that it's inspiring, and possibly inspiring to change something. Doesn't have to change something, but that's the exciting thing of a Mercury Cazimi in this season. The 3rd transit is something that we've all been looking forward to for a while. This is Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter has been in Gemini for about a year at this point, and he's moving into Cancer June 8th, and he'll be there for about a year. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. Loves being in Cancer. Jupiter is at home in Pisces and Sagittarius, but Jupiter exalts in Cancer. And this can look like so many things. This can look like the collective is finally taking care of something, or everyone. Thinking about the Cancer energy of care and intentional support. Jupiter has not been that happy in Gemini. Gemini is technically a sign where Jupiter falls, doesn't feel as supported. So there'll be that great shift June 8th for a year from Jupiter not feeling great like in the sign to feeling the best Jupiter can feel in any sign. But there's a caution here, is that we put a lot of hope into this transit. We put so much energy, we're hoping that Jupiter in Cancer is a cure to all of ailments happening right now. And there has been so much violence and strife and loss and diminishment of care systems in our culture. So we need to be careful not to say, okay, well, Jupiter in Cancer is going to fix it. That may be true. There may be some really great developments where Jupiter is now in a place to make meaning-making systems amongst different people so that more people have support and feel nourished in this world. This may be true, but we also need to put our action behind that. We can't just wait for these nebulous threads that Jupiter in Cancer promises to occur, right? So that's another thing is about Cancer energy, as well as Cancer is active love. Love is only powerful when it is acted upon. You can say day and night that you love something or someone or some place, but it's not until you put your action toward that the love is felt. So that's another thing I've been thinking about for Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, now we're ready to jump into the rising sign horoscopes for Gemini season. Okay, water sign risings. This is for Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces risings. In general, Gemini season is where you experience your quieter moments. I think about the sun. A lot of astrology is based on where the sun is, the seasons of the sun, how high the light is, how low the light is. Our solstices are when the light trajectory changes. So summer solstice is when the light then begins to very slowly fade down, and the winter solstice is when the light begins to grow back. So I'm thinking about Gemini season for the three of you as a reminder that we need quieter periods before the greater external pushes, the more energetic periods, and how important it is to honor the winter or the fall before we have a spring and a summer. And if we're thinking about this as a 30-day long winter, or quiet or contemplative, or maybe more emotional, more inward seeking moment in our year, the more we lean into that, the better experience we have in general. We're not as hard on ourselves. And then also when we relieve, or when we release from those quiet periods, we have a greater experience when we're pushing externally, and we maybe have more yang energy. So I maybe thinking about Gemini season as a yin season for you, 30 days of slowing down or listening, contemplating. Yeah. So that's the general energy. I'll also touch on Saturn moving into Aries and where that happens in your chart, as well as Jupiter moving into Cancer, and then the Mercury Cazimi that's happening in Gemini in one of your quiet houses. So I'll get specific with the rising signs. Cancer rising, Gemini season happens in your 12th house, which is the house of great compassion. It's the house of ego loss, ego dissolution. It's the house that we have a harder time perceiving because it's like right at our periphery. So what happens there, especially when the sun is there, the sun is like consciousness, and then the 12th house is kind of like our lack of consciousness, what we are not fully aware of. So there's maybe more, maybe your dreams are speaking more loudly, or maybe there's synchronicities in interactions in your life. So like maybe there's something happening with you and a parent that is like mirrored really strangely with a colleague. Or you witness a lot of like external, maybe like you're viewing the ocean or the forest or plants and animals, and that feels like a mirror to what's happening in your work life. So there's more of like a strange amount of flowing energy and information that is not usually connected when the sun is here. And there can maybe be some tension in that like you feel like you should be expressing or leaning towards something with the conscious energy. So that's the conscious energy is like what we give our attention, our focus to. And it's difficult to give our focus to something that we're not able to focus on consciously, or unconscious mind. One way to lean into that is to dream journal, or to access your inner parts in more fluid or artistic or musical ways, maybe. This could be a really good month to release verbal projects and allow for the verbal quality of your body, your dreams, your synchronicities to do the speaking. When I am in my 12th house season, which for me is Sagittarius season, opposite season, I don't plan anything because I've learned that if I plan something, it usually falls through because of various reasons. Since I started honoring my 12th house season, I've really leaned into like herbal remedies, anticipating that I may get sick because of a low vitality. This is not saying that this is a low vitality season for everyone, but for me, is I tend to push beyond my body's energy or my subconscious energy, and that results in me getting sick usually that time of year. So I want to encourage you to allow for more ease and space in your schedules, and maybe allow for more quiet time, not as many social engagements, because you'll be listening to things that are harder to listen to, that aren't as verbal or relational or personal, and more intuitive. So I'll move on to Saturn moving into Aries into your 10th house for about 2.5 years, off and on. There's a little bit of a break at the end of this year, but after that, he'll be staying in Aries for a bit. So Saturn in Aries in the 10th house to me says that Saturn wants you to find more containment or boundaries or definition around how you put your effort out into the world. And this could look like leaving the current position because it's either too wide or it's too specific for your liking. And I think that Saturn is asking Cancer risings to cultivate, hone's a good word for this, hone in on what kind of effort you want to put onto this world in this lifetime. So thinking really, really long term. And if there's anything in excess that is not fitting that mission, being like ruthless in that you won't be doing those side tasks because you know that you are working toward this for the next 30 years, 7 years, 14 years. Those are Saturn numbers. Yeah, so think about that. It's like, what feels like it's not a part of your story? And it may be difficult to make that discernment right now, but in 2.5 years, it looks like, well, I believe that a Saturn transit helps you get to the point where you can make those definitions and those cuts and those honing processes by the end. So don't rush anything. Allow for the planet of time to do his magic through time. Cancer, Cancer rising. You have Jupiter moving from your 12th house of the unconscious mind into the first house of like one of the most conscious places. It's the first house is your role in this world, your personhood, your vitality. Not Saturn, Jupiter moving into your first house looks like just like great ease with your energy levels, great ease in knowing how you show up in the world, great ease in how you feel about yourself. So that's a year-long transit of like, I call it like the feeling yourself year. Especially is because Jupiter has just been in that part of your chart where you have less awareness of what he was doing there. So it's like a really big shift from like, I think something's happening here to like, yes, like I am out in the world and I have Jupiter's energy shining on me. And then lastly, the Mercury Cazimi in your 12th house, I expect that's May 29th, 2025. I expect that to look like maybe there is like a really noticeable synchronicity. Maybe there is something that happens externally that has been happening internally or vice versa, and they happen at the same time, and you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So there's more, the Mercury energy at the same degree as the sun is like clarity, something clicking, like that kind of energy. So I'm curious if something like that happens for you on the 29th. And if it does, please leave a message or a comment on this video, because I really want to see how it shows up for everyone. But like I'm extra curious because of that 12th house, the unconscious house, how it would show up. Okay, Scorpio risings. Gemini season for you is in the 8th house of like intimacy, shared energies, what we balance or we trade in exchange in this like kind of nebulous, risky way with another being. And I say being intentionally because that could be a human being, it could be an animal, it could be any living being, it could be someone who has passed that you are in some way communicating with through the beyond. So this is the Gemini season is where our conscious mind goes to how we interact in a deeply psychological or deeply spiritual or deeply intimate way with another. This could also look like a month to focus on shared finances, money being so connected to our physical wellness and sense of security, and working toward or giving your conscious energy toward balancing what may be out of balance in that way. Kind of vague language to say this is a quieter house in our chart, so it can be difficult, like I said before, to balance like choice, attention, and focus when it may be better for your energy to release, surrender, melt into the circumstances and allow for less conscious ways of acting to take place. So like you can plan for an experience to happen in your life, or you can allow for that experience to happen and trust that the environment or the elements will line up in the way that they need to in order for you to experience that. Again, very vague language because the 8th house is truly personal and interpersonal and unpredictable part of our life. Again, I want to stress that this is potentially a winter season for you, so quieter, contemplative, slower, possibly. And the slower you go the more, I think, support and tenderness you will feel in your relationships. So I'll talk then about Saturn moving into Aries into your 6th house. Saturn is the planet of time. When Saturn passes through your sixth house, the house of like daily care, labor, health routines, that kind of what you tend to daily or what you trade in order to receive something else. So that could be you trade time for money, that kind of thing. Saturn, the planet of time, moving through the sixth house, looks like a greater awareness of time. So you may task yourself with 10 things to get done that day. In these 2.5 years, it may look like you really get precise and you understand how long it takes you to accomplish something. And that could come with early on in this transit lessons of like you task yourself with far too many things at once, and you never quite complete that to-do list. What may support you for this transit, this 2.5 year transit, is allowing for more spaciousness or more focus time on matters that have more weight to them. So maybe in the past you have spent a lot of your days like knocking things out like one after the other. Saturn wants you, I said this for another sign, Saturn wants you to understand that maybe there's one thing that is as powerful or has as material as the 10, 20 things that you also have on your list. And in the end, focusing on this one thing, whether it's boring or not, will be the only thing you need to do. And by the end of this transit, I think that lesson will be like integrated into your existence. I kind of want to give an example, but that might be difficult. But my gut is saying to give an example. So thinking about the sixth house as a place of like physical fitness routine as well. Maybe in the past your morning routine looked like doing 10 different things like stretches, jumping, running, like all of these things that make you feel well. But maybe in this transit you learn, really, it's this one thing. If I only do that in the morning, it has the same benefit as all those other 15 things I did before. And maybe it's not just one thing, but it's like really cultivating, honing what actually is supporting your overall wellness or abundance or experience. Moving on to Jupiter moving into Cancer, into your 9th house. Jupiter is the planet of meaning making. He coheres, he connects many different ways of thinking and being. When Jupiter is in the 9th house, it looks like gaining greater receiving more guidance, more insight, more cohesion with how you perceive the world or what you believe to be true, and how receiving truth or experiencing truth or witnessing truth benefits all other parts of your life. For example, it could look like love is all there is. What's the Beatles song? Love is all you need. And like that sentence is all you need in this world. And in this year of Jupiter being in the 9th house, you are reminded love is all you need, or whatever the truth is that you receive, and that being the guiding light for how you live all other parts of your life. Think about how truth or those phrases can add nurturance, nutrition to your life as well, and other people's lives. And then lastly, the Mercury Cazimi in Gemini, talking again about this house being the house of intimacy. On May 29th, I expect you to feel just like a great insight into what makes you feel so deeply seen and understood and held and trusted in this planet, and maybe seeing how you can trust other people on this planet in a specific way. Okay, that's for Scorpio rising. Pisces rising, Gemini season for you is in your 4th house. The sun is bringing conscious focus and attention to the bottom of your chart, the most private part of your life. Again, this may be a season of quiet. The private part of our life is the part of our life that we should be defending, we should be protecting. We do not allow everyone into that space, for good reason. When our psyche, when our quiet psychological parts of ourself, when our ancestry, when our people, when our family knows that they can go to the same place and no one else is allowed, there are only certain things that can be said or shared. It's not always that the fourth house is talked about a place for sharing, but my sense is that because Gemini rules your fourth house, there is a greater emphasis on detailed conversation or intimate conversation, and how language feels supportive and supportive of your sense of safety and security. So in this month, there's this energy of really going inward. This could be a really, really great month for journaling or shadow work, like using journaling as a shadow work activity, and really just getting intimate with the language inside of yourself and how you speak to yourself, or what language you use to describe the world around you to your innermost self. The Mercury Cazimi on May. We're in May. We're not in March. May 29th may look like you have a greater idea or a better sense of what makes you feel like yourself. Like how actors know to use certain language when they're playing a certain part, because this person who has this occupation and this gender and wouldn't use this word, but they'll use this word. That's kind of what I'm seeing for the Mercury Cazimi, is like, you know, in your most intimate places what language you use and what makes you specifically you. I'm curious how that will show up in your life, and how the quieter you get, the more you can get insight into that. Saturn moving into Aries, into your second house, looks like putting limitations or specificity on how you bring in income. I wonder if in the past few years it's felt like you're piecemealing income, or you are learning as much as you can in a broad sense of skills and talents in your industry, and now Saturn is asking you to individuate. The Aries energy, Saturn in Aries, is like, be precise on what you offer the world, and the more precise you are, the more abundance will come to you. And it may be a pretty uncomfortable experience to be like, nope, this is what I offer and this is not what I offer. And it may feel difficult to say no, especially as a Pisces rising, like ruled by Jupiter, the planet that's just like, yes, come on, right? So it's balancing your nature of allowing and inviting with putting up boundaries and seeing what works for you and what doesn't. And remembering that you have 2.5 years of this transit and not rushing to like make it count. Okay. And then I think I said everything. Yeah. So that's for the water risings, rising signs this Gemini season. I highly, highly encourage you to sink in, float the water words, to really allow for this season to be a time for calm, reprieve, and peace, and not self-judgment if you feel like you don't have the energy you usually have to get out there and be social and to put work out. This is a really holy time in your year to rest, reflect, and go inward. So I send you so much care. Bye.